Okay, good morning. We are on Lamed Amud Aleph, and we are going to discuss what happens when your kalim, when your utensils get trafed up with earthenware vessels, right? What do you do with an earthenware vessel that becomes trafe, or begets chametz stick? We're going to start really with chametz because that's really our focus, but we're going to be able to glean from there some halachos about an earthenware vessel that becomes non-kosher, becomes trafe. Similarly, we're also going to discuss the number one question, and that is, we'll see actually. Okay. Suspense. Okay, I don't have to keep everyone up. It's early in the morning. Okay, Amarav. We are on 30A1, the last few words of 30A1. Amarav, or if you're on Lamed Amud Aleph, there's two dots. Amarav kideros bepesach yishavru. If earthenware pots, which are used for chametz, have to be broken when Pesach comes. Why do they have to be broken when Pesach comes? Rav, if you recall, paskins like Rabbi Yehuda. What does Rabbi Yehuda hold? He holds that chametz sha'avra lava Pesach. It is asur even after Pesach, even in a minute amount. Right, so let's think about this. I used this earthenware pot for chametz on middle of beginning of Nisan, and I used it to cook some chametz. Now, trapped in the walls of this earthenware pot is a little bit of chametz, and now it's stuck there. It's stuck there, even though normally we say there's something called nosein tam livgam, and that is if you wait 24 hours, then usually the taste is diminished enough that it's no longer substantial. Rav also holds that doesn't apply over here. It doesn't apply by chametz. Doesn't apply in general. Rav holds, and therefore, sorry, was we saying Rav or Rav? Yeah, Rav. And therefore he holds that. Okay. So let's see. So the Gemara is going. Basically, he says that the chametz flavor is still going to be here, and therefore it is going to be usher. Ask the Gemara. V'amai 38:2 lishinu achar Pesach v'levad behu shelo b'minan. Right. If you recall, Rav held that after Pesach. Remember that check mark? You see the Rav over there. After Pesach. Mino, you can't use, right? Even a minute amount you can't use, but Eino Mino, you're allowed to use it for. So just hold on to this pot. Granted, you can't use it for Mino, but you can use it for Eino Mino after Pesach, because, right? So the Gemara answers, Gezerah, Dama Asu L'Mavad B'Hu B'Mino. It's going to be a little confusing. Imagine holding on to one pot, and for the rest of your life, you could only use that pot for the same type of food that the chametz was. A little too hard. And therefore, Rav said there is nothing you can do with this earthenware pot. The chametz is stuck in it. He basically holds nosein tam livgam is not enough to cause the flavor to be, even though it wasn't used for 24 hours, it's not enough to mitigate the flavor, not to get rid of the flavor, and therefore it cannot be used after Pesach for mino, for its own type. However, Eino Mino, we're concerned. I should be able to use it for Eino Mino, but I'm concerned I'm going to end up using it for Mino, and therefore he says nothing to do with it. Break the pot. Okay.
If there's ham in a vessel, that's not bal yira, bal yimatzeh. It's seeing and finding, but that's not.
At the end of the day, it's possession, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's still chametz, meaning, okay, maybe you will not be over bal yira. I'm not entirely sure.
Isn't that what we're talking about here, though?
No, we're talking about any time that there's, at the end of the day, there's chametz. Is there chametz over here that is meaning, at the end of the day, he says there's the isser of eating chametz that existed, meaning, Rav Shimon holds that because you were over in Bal Yirah, you can't eat it after Pesach as a gzera. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, the way Rav's learning it, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the point is that you cannot eat chametz after Pesach. Chametz that existed during Pesach, you cannot eat. It's independent of Bal Yirah, meaning it's just simply any chametz you're going to eat. Yeah.
Okay. You don't have to be able to see it.
Correct. Right. Correct. As long as you're eating chametz and you know it's chametz, that's going to be the problem. Exactly. Shmuel Amar lo yishavru. Shmuel disagrees. He says you don't have to break it. Aval mashi l'hu la'achar zmano. Rather, you keep this thing until after Pesach. Va'avivu bein b'mino, bein b'shlo b'mino, and you're allowed to eat it with any food, whether it's chametz of its kind or not of its kind. Va'azda Shmuel litameh, and this is consistent with Shmuel's opinion elsewhere. Amar Shmuel lahanu de mizabne kande. Right now, let's just pause for a second. Why does Shmuel say it's mutter? Because Shmuel holds he holds that chametz after Pesach. He holds like Rav Shimon, right? I should have brought this thing over here, but you see it, yeah. Shmuel holds like Rav Shimon that there's no issue because within Rav Shimon, Rav Shimon only held that chametz which is not be'en. If you had absolute, thank you, Jesse. What's it called? Thank you. Okay. Much appreciated. Okay, so Rav Shimon, what do Rav Shimon holds? Rav Shimon holds the only biblical isser is chametz on Pesach. After Pesach, thank you so much. After Pesach, there is no real isser. There's only a isser d'Rabbanan, right? But the isser d'Rabbanan was only when it's be'en, only when you see it, when it stands alone. When it's mixed into something else, no problem. So over here, the flavor is trapped in the walls of the utensil. Therefore, there's no problem. And therefore, Shmuel holds, like Rav Shimon, I can point to it, thank you, Jesse, that if I have a pot I'm allowed to go ahead and use this pot, even though it's an earthenware pot, I'm allowed to use it after Pesach, no problem. And now we have a great story where Shmuel said to these people who sold new pots after Pesach, Ashvu zvine akandaichi. Set the prices of your pots in line with their true value. Okay, so basically Shmuel was in a city, and it seems like they were selling after Pesach. There was a run on pots. Okay, there was a run on pots. People are buying new pots after Pesach, and Shmuel said, "You better keep the prices at the right prices." Why? V'lo darshina lechu k'Rabbi Shimon. I'm going to announce that even the old pots are okay because the halacha is like Rav Shimon. And therefore, right? And so the Gemara says, wait, V'lidur shluhu, Shmuel Rav Shimon Svirle. He's saying, why does he have to threaten them? He should be telling them anyways. The halacha is like Rav Shmuel. So the answer is, Asrid Rav Hava. He was in the city of Rav. Okay, you have to keep in mind, when you go to someone's city, back in the day, nowadays we don't really have this reality, but if you go to a place where it's Rav's city, Rav was the chief rabbi, in Rav's city, it would be inappropriate, to be actually halachically really problematic, for Shmuel to start paskening against Rav. So in Rav's city, the halacha would be there like Rav Yehuda. But Shmuel was there, and Shmuel said, listen guys, I'm going to keep my mouth shut, but you better not charge people too much for those pots, right? And start, because again, everyone's running for pots. Immediately, if you were smart, after Pesach, if you were smart and bad, after Pesach, you would raise the prices for the pots, and because everyone's buying them. So he says, you better not raise the prices, or else I'm going to let everyone know, I'm going to paskin and tell everyone that the halach is really like Rav Shimon, and no one's going to be buying your pots at all. So you better just keep the prices regular, or else I'm going to open my mouth. Okay, fascinating.
You have today, right? You were describing at one point, Stark K, and certain things that we do with warming food on Shabbos and things that other cities might not. So
right, to some degree, but you wouldn't have the same limitation. Yeah, exactly.
Here, you do it,
Correct. Okay. Hahu tanura, at the bottom 38 too. Hahu tanura detachu beitichaya. There's an oven that they greased with animal fat. They greased with meat. Okay, now this actually comes up a lot. Now it's very common. Oh gosh, I'm blanking on the term. The pots now they're seasoned. What do they call Okay, there's a very specific type of pan that they season. There's something for it called there's a term for it. But basically they season it with oils to give it flavoring. Okay, and this is very popular now. It's killing me.
It comes manufactured like that?
It comes manufactured like that. Okay, it's a big shaila, right? They comes manufactured where there's a pot where it comes seasoned with a certain flavoring, and it's done deliberately. It's a
None of us have it, don't worry.
no, I get the shaila all the time. Sure, maybe you do. I get it. Not a wok. No, it's a.
Like a frying pan?
It's a type of frying pan, but it's like a thick one. It's a very thick one. It comes with this coating, and that's basically what's going on over here. But over here, that's a little different because we're also dealing with earthenware. Okay, let's remind ourselves: earthenware generally speaking, cannot be kashered. And we learned from the Pesachim. We'll see that explicitly later on. But basically, earthenware cannot be kashered. But now you have this earthenware which is coated with a meat coating. Okay, so Asra Rava bar Ahilai lemechla l'rifta. So Rava bar Achilai said you can't eat bread in it. Why? Afil b'milcha, even if it's eaten with salt. By saying eaten with salt, what does he mean? He means even if it's not eaten with anything else. Back in the day, you always ate bread with salt. By the way, that's the origin of why we dip our bread in salt. There's Kabbalistic reasons, but the real reason, the original source of why we dip our bread in salt when you make a bracha is simply, and really should be done during the week as well, and that is bread back in the day used to taste like nothing, or it tasted bad, and no one ate bread without salt, and therefore, to say a bracha and eat the bread without salt would be wrong. You say a bracha on something which tastes good, and therefore you dip it in salt. Nowadays, our bread tastes delicious without salt. Technically speaking, you don't really have to dip it in salt. There's Kabbalistic reasons to do so. Okay, but the point is that he's saying that even bread that's eaten plain, you can't do so. La'olam, you can never use, if you have an oven that was greased with this meat, with fat of a meat, of an animal, you can't use it to bake bread in it. Okay, even if you eat the bread alone, the olam dilma asla mechle bekutcha, because there's a concern that you may end up eating this bread together with dairy. Kutach is a dairy dip. You may you're going to bake this bread and you're going to eat it with dairy. Therefore, it's not allowed. Okay, yeah, but again, it's an oven which has flesh on the whatever, and he says therefore you can never bake bread in it because you might go ahead and eat that bread together with milk. Okay, meisve. They might ask the question. Ein lashon esa isa b'chalav. You're not allowed to knead dough with milk. Okay, vim lash kol paskula asura. Okay, and if you did, then the entire bread is asur. Mipnei hergel avera, since it might lead to sin. Okay, this is halacha. If you ever find bread that has a kosher symbol and it has dairy, good chance that the kosher symbol is actually a lousy hechsher. Or I shouldn't say it like that. Oh, I'll say it. Let's go. The point is, it's usually normative, mainstream, acceptable hashgacha will give a hechsher on dairy bread, because the Shulchan Aruch writes that bread that goes ahead and it actually happened to me once I was traveling. I was running a traveling camp, and we were on like some, I don't know, the boondocks somewhere. We were like traveling through the Midwest, and we bought some buns that had a hechsher, whatever. We were questioning. Later on, we looked at it, we're like, it was dairy bread. It was mamish. This is the reason where everyone's eating hot dogs with like these buns and whatever it is, and it was like dairy buns. Like, go figure, right? Like, insane. Anyway, the point is that that dairy bread, it's usher. You can't do so. Halachically, you're allowed. By the way, for Shavuos, they say, that's brought down. If you have a very small amount, it's allowed. It's a very small amount it's allowed, because then you bake it. You're eating it for a meal. But if you start making a larger amount, it's not allowed, because you're going to eat it, and then the next day you forget what's this bread with? Oh, whatever. You go ahead and you eat it with some gravy, whatever it's going to be. Bottom line is, bread kneaded with milk cannot be eaten because it might be eaten with meat. Kayotzebo. Similarly, Ein tashin es atanar ba'alya. You're not allowed to grease the bread oven with the fatty tail of a sheep. Vim tash, and if you did so, if you were 30b1, if you did grease the oven, kol pas kula asura, then the bread is asur. Okay, it's forbidden. Why is the bread asur? Because I might go ahead and eat that bread together with dairy, right? But here's the key line: sheyasik as a tanor, until you fire up the oven to burn away the fat. So what do you see from here? Rav, who was it? It was Rava bar Ahilai said you can never use such an oven. But we see over here in this brisa, not that you can never use the oven. You could, as once you burn the oven, once you put a fire in the oven and you let it burn out, then it's allowed. In other words, you could kosher that oven, right? Rava bar Hailai said this oven that you coated with the fat can never be used with you can never bake bread in it, right? Because it will always have that flavor of the meat. But now we're seeing over here that's not true. Over here in this brisa it says just burn make a fire in the oven. Again, what's the lashon? Achi yasik is a tanner until you fire up the oven. Hahusa katanor, right? So the Gemara infers from here. If you did fire up the oven, mia shari, then you would be allowed to bake bread in it. To yufta Rava bar Ahilai. This is a refutation of Rava bar Ahilai to yufta. It's indeed a refutation, right? You with me? In other words, Rava bar Ahilai said this oven is forbidden forever. Once you coated it with meat, you can never use it again, right? And we have a brisa over here that says no. The first time you can't use it once you coated it, but once you fire it up, you could use it. So Amrle Ravina Rashi. Okay. Okay, so let's pause over here, by the way. So that is the halacha. If you have one of these pans, which the name will come to me as soon as we finish this year, and you have one of these pans which is coated with oils or meats, whatever, with these oil, even of oil, the halacha is you're supposed to do, the normative halacha, you're supposed to do libun, meaning you have to burn it out. You have to really burn it out before using it the first time, because at the end, according to most poskim, it's big machlokas, but according to most poskim, because there is a layer of there's this layer of fat. It could even be non-kosher fat that's on it, non-kosher oil, non-kosher fat, whatever it is. And therefore, what you need to do is hagala. If you have one of these pans that has this layer of seasoning, you'd have to go ahead and everyone's looking. You're looking it up.
It's just called a seasoned pan. Sorry, I looked it up.
Okay.
It's just a seasoned cast iron pan.
I was looking for cast iron. It's very common with cast iron. Thank you. Cast iron. Seasoned cast iron pan. It's very common for those who like cast iron pans. Apparently, I don't know, things taste better. Thank you. Things taste, I don't know. So apparently a lot of people buy them. It's very popular these days. And you have these seasoned cast iron pans. So you'd have to go ahead and kosher it first before actually going ahead and using it, because it has these oils. There's some discussion about how they put the oils on it. Was it actually burnt onto it? Was it just placed onto it? And therefore maybe you don't need koshering? The bottom line is the normative, or Belsky and others, Paskin, you have to go ahead and do libun. You really want to just throw it into your oven and go through a cycle in the oven, ideally like a self-clean cycle, shouldn't get ruined, to kosher it out. But that's what comes out over here. Bottom line is, what do we see? We see, so again, we have this tiyufta, we have this refutation of Rava bar Hilai, because you see that such an oven could be used. Okay, Amrle Ravina Ravashi. Now Ravina turns to Ravashi and says, V'chimi acher di tosef Rava bar Hilai. Once we've refuted Rava bar Hilai, amai kama Rav k'diras Pesach hishavru. So let's go back to Rav. Why did Rav say that you break the earthenware pots? Right? At the end of the day, why can't you just go ahead and fire up the pots to remove the flavor? In other words, right? So why do we have to throw them away? So Amrle Hasam Tanur Shel Mateches. We said, whoa. The Rav says the oven. The question, when we ask the question from this brisa, we assumed we're talking about an earthenware oven. Rav says no. The oven we're talking about over there is a metal oven. Whoa, metal you could kosher. Everyone agrees metal could be koshered, right? Rav was dealing with a pot made of earthenware. Alternatively, another possible way that Rav understands it, that both the things he was talking about was earthenware and the oven was earthenware. Okay, zeh hasekan mibafnim, v'zeh hasekan mibachutz. The difference is that when you are koshering an oven, the firing is done from the inside. Okay, and whereas when it comes to the bowls, the way that people would kosher it is typically on the outside. Okay, and when it's done on the outside, it's not going to be able to be as hot. Okay, and therefore, and it's not going to be able to get the flavor from the inside. Right. In other words, what do you do when you kosher, right? So let's say you have your koshering an oven, you put the fire inside the oven. If you're koshering a bowl or a spoon, whatever, a bowl, let's say, what do? You make a fire and you put the bowl inside of it. That means that the fire is coming from the outside. Where was the flavor? The flavor was on the inside, right? In other words, so therefore you're not going to be able to kosher properly. Ask the Gemara, v'chitema, hachinami, levele hasakim efnim. Okay, so put a fire in the inside. Put the fire on the inside. Or in other words, okay, so you're right. Typically, when you kosher a pot, a bowl, you put it in over a fire, and it's getting from the outside. Okay, so put some coals inside and kosher from the inside. The Gemara says, a person is not going to do it properly because they're going to be concerned it's going to break. And this is actually a very important halacha, and that is that we say, you're right, technically you could put coals inside. The problem is that since there's a possibility that it's going to break, therefore people are not going to do it properly. And this comes up in a couple of places. If the situation where koshering something where you're concerned it's going to break, you're not allowed to kosher it. Right? Let's say you have like certain types of things, like I would say like anything that's not dishwasher safe, you can't kosher. You can't kosher because you're going to go ahead and put it into the boiling hot water. You're going to do it really quickly because you're going to be afraid it's going to kosher. You're not going to put it in fully. You're going to put it in too fat, whatever it's going to be. Therefore, it's only things which you're not afraid it's going to break. That's where you let it kosher. But if it's something which is very breakable, very fragile, you would not be able to break. I'm going to keep on going because we have to start in a second. So it says Hilka Chaybuchya, and therefore this tile ring, which is a type of thing that they cooked with, he's sikumi bachutz hu va'aser. If the firing is on the outside, it's prohibited. V'malya gurmei shaper dami. But if you filled it with coals, in other words, this tile ring is something which is made very strong, and therefore a person would not be concerned that it would break, and therefore you would be allowed to go ahead and fill it up with coals, and that would be good koshering. Again, it depends on the item. If it's something which you're afraid that it's going to break, you cannot kosher by putting stuff inside, but if it's something you're not afraid, then you would be able to kosher this earthenware thing by putting the coals inside. Okay.
I'm just wondering.